Another week catching up with Alex Brink, talking WSU Cougar football. The Cougars coming off of a tough 2 point loss on the road at number 18, Virginia. Alex, we'll start with the good. Another top 10 opponent on the road in another time zone, and you play really well. What did you see from the Cougs in that game that led them to being right in there at the end and really kind of in control of this game the whole way?
I really loved what I saw from the defense. They were flying around, made a ton of plays, stepped up in big moments when kind of back was against the wall at times, and frankly, just kind of ran out of steam at the end when they were asked to do a lot. I thought offensively, it was a pretty consistent performance, particularly in the first half, and then injuries on the offensive line. I think some adjustments by Virginia maybe caught up to the Cougs a little bit, and I think in the end, Zevi Eckhaus maybe pressed just a little bit, kind of like we saw with that in that UW game late. Feeling like he had to make every play, and the turnovers really ultimately were the difference, right?
Yeah, and two losses to top 25 team by combined 5 points, but Jimmy Rogers is not the kind for moral victories, saying plainly that these are two games that the Cougars could have won, and that is correct. So, some kind of late game miscues by the Cougs in the fourth quarter at Virginia. What needs to happen to make sure that those don't happen again? Because it was kind of a weird situation. You got a fair catch, a miscommunication, and then all of a sudden you're backed up. So what does a team do after kind of letting one slip away like that ensures it doesn't happen again?
We got to learn from it for sure, and not let it compound, right? Like the reality here is that this is a team full of either relatively new players to Washington State or relatively new Washington State players to the lineup, right? And so a lot of these guys have not seen big moments like that. I mean, some big moments down at Ole Miss, some big moments out in Virginia. Where if you think about in the past, there were some players on the Washington State rosters when they're playing, top 20 opponents that have seen it before, right, and can handle those moments. So, it has to be learning lessons for young players, right? The communication has to continue to get better. Part of playing football is that you have a million things coming at you at once, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, and being able to manage all those things, in very high intensity situations is vital. And so, to me, this is about building off the last 2 weeks, heading into the back half of your season, back third of your season, and not letting two tough losses, kind of set you back because of the emotional toll it took.
Absolutely. So we've reached a very important part of the Cougar season. 5 games remaining, three of them at home, including the first time the Cougars will play at home in over a month against Toledo. We'll talk about that game and break that down in a minute. But just first, what's still left on the table, Alex? I mean, every game is a winnable game. I mean, look how the Cougars played at Ole Miss, at Virginia. But these are 5 games that the Cougars will have a really legitimate shot to come out on top of. And outside of a travel to James Madison, the only other road trip you take is to Corvallis, a familiar place and a shorter road trip. So, what do you think the Cougars can really accomplish in this last 5 games of the season as they look to, get bowl eligible and cap off the start of the Jimmy Rogers era the right way?
I certainly think that the bowl eligibility is a big piece of it, right? Getting 3 out of 5 at minimum is a huge win for this team. I mean, 75 new players, new coaching staff across the board, 2 new systems. You kind of deal with quarterback change during the season, and if you're able to come away with a bowl game, I think this program feels like they're in a really good spot. Especially considering the showings you had against 2 really good football teams in Ole Miss and Virginia, and then you can kind of explain away North Texas a little bit as just a really bad outing, that happens at times, and you can't have them. But I think that would go a long way in the psyche of not just the players and the team as a whole, but the fan base too, right? If the Cougs can weather the storm of Jake Dicker leaving and taking a bunch of players and transfer portal, decimating the roster and restarting and still able to get through that. I mean, think about, the excitement this fan base could have moving forward with Jimmy Rogers at the helm.
Go back to how the season was feeling after the Apple Cup, and everybody thought the sky was falling, and then a pretty good response from the team since then. So Cougs, for family weekend this weekend, we'll be hosting Toledo. If it's a team you haven't seen a lot, imagine watching the Washington State Cougars. They love to run the football and they love to play defense. And I'll ask you, Alex, when you were playing a team that had a similar style as yours, did you like that more, or do teams like to go against a style that they don't see every day, where there might not be the same tendencies?
It's definitely nice to have some similarities, because in the end, then it comes down to execution, right? Like you've seen it before. Say you're a defense, right? You've seen some of the plays and schemes and designs before. It comes down to getting off blocks and tackling, right? And understanding your assignment and executing. And I think this defense in particular is uniquely suited for that. A lot of veterans, guys that play with their hair on fire. So I think that's a positive. I think offensively, it's a little bit easier because you know what coverages you're going to get, or what looks you're going to get. In the end, you just got to go play your game, right? And I think the offense has shown the ability to be really multi-dimensional. And when they're running the football well and they're doing things kind of on schedule, they're hard to stop, right? So we need to see that, right? The second half of Virginia was not that. The first half was, much of Ole Miss was. So if they can get on track there, I think it should be a good day.
Ready to face this Toledo offense? Who's a couple of difference makers on the Cougar defense that have either made their names known throughout the season, or maybe somebody you expect just with the matchup in this one to really have an increased role?
Been really fun to watch that Cougar defense because you've seen some new faces kind of emerge, guys that you had heard about along the way, step up in a big way. Also, Isaac Terrell is kind of the number one, right? Is assuming he can get healthy and feel good after two really tough weeks where a lot was asked of him. He's a real difference maker on the defensive line for sure. And with Ram Stevenson potentially being out and some other injuries on that defensive line, they need number 88, ready to go and make an impact. Parker McKenna, to me, at linebacker, has been a revelation. I think part of that scheme-wise, they kind of design it so that the linebackers can fly around and make plays, and he's been that guy. I mean, he's really consistent tackling in space. He's made some big plays. And then kind of on that back end, the guy that I've been really impressed with, and all of them have played really well, for me, it's been Colby Humphreys. Like, he's been as good as it gets in coverage and in stepping up and tackling, having a corner that's willing to do both things at a high level. Really helps you because you just feel like you have a comfort level on one side of the field. So the entire secondary's played really well. They're going to need to step up and tackle and continue to improve that, as Jimmy has said over and over again. But I think in general, the defense is really a bright spot for this team.
Was such a big talking point at the start of the season. I'm kind of surprised I haven't really asked you about Zevi Eckhaus and quarterback play in a few weeks. Just kind of now that he has a good chunk of starts under his belt, just what's kind of the things you're seeing from him, as we get to the last 5 games that can help this Cougar offense continue to blossom.
Well, there's no doubt that Zevi's been a shot in the arm for this team, since he took over. And a lot of that is, his emotional leadership, his kind of moxie and his willingness to, really his willingness to use his legs, his competitive nature. I think people feed off of that, but on top of that, he's a really accurate passer. I mean, he throws the football, he doesn't have the strongest arm by any means, but he puts it in places where guys can make plays. And I feel like when they're running the football really well and doing and executing play action pass, it's a really tough offense to stop. And then, when he's getting creative, like we saw against Virginia, that's that little extra dimension that, every quarterback seems like nowadays, if they're successful, seems to have. So, he's got a great tool, toolbox, as I like to say, things he can pull from. The biggest thing for him, again, is just making sure he doesn't feel like he has to do it all. And there's those moments when, as a player, you're feeling like, oh man, I can do this. I can find a way to put the team on my shoulders and make it happen. And, that's when we end up forcing throws and, probably doing things maybe a little bit outside of what we should do. And so I think for Zevi, he's at his best when he's operating in the confines of the offense and then making the plays that come to him, not forcing it. And so if he can do that, he's going to continue to play great. But in the end, I mean, he's the reason this team has improved as much as it has offensively. There's no doubt about it.
That's one for you. If the Cougars do one thing to be successful this weekend, get a win over Toledo, what is it that you think they have to do?
I'd love to see it. They got to force a couple turnovers, right? This is a defense that's played really well, but hasn't really forced a ton of turnovers other than fourth down stops. So I'd like to see him punch the ball out, see if they get a forced fumble recovery, maybe an interception. I think the defense feels like it's due for that and start to balance out that turnover margin a little bit.
Make sure you come out to Gesa Field in Pullman. It's been more than a month and we've seen the Cougars back at home, so take advantage of it because it also might be the last time we get a good weather game in Pullman. So who knows what's coming? That's Alex Brink. Thanks, Alex, so much, and make sure you catch up with Alex and Michael Bumpus for talking Cougs. And we'll see you next week. Hopefully, we're talking after a Cougar win and heading in the right direction.
Thanks. Go Cougs.